Okay, today let's talk about how to get really strong. We'll make this movement specific. So getting really strong is movement specific. You can be really strong at one movement without being very strong in another. And there is some carryover. So if you're doing a back squat and a front squat, there's some carryover to that. If you're pretty good at back squatting, you'll probably be decent at front squatting, but you could also, be doing squats and bench presses. Those are very different muscle groups, and be very strong at one and not very strong at the other. But let's talk about the three main factors that go into getting strong, and that will lead us into how do we do it. The first is that, of course, a bigger muscle is a stronger muscle. In most good strength programs across all of our recorded strength history, most coaches will program probably something like 80% of the total volume to be more moderate rep, moderate intensity work that helps to build muscle in a more appropriate way. Not that you can't build muscle with very heavy weight in lower reps. It's just much harder to get all the volume in, and building muscle requires some substantial amount of volume in order to do optimally. Most programs, again, 80% of the work you're doing will probably be in the more hypertrophy style versus max strength work. If you are not maximizing or trying to maximize how much lean mass you have, you're probably leaving some strength on the table. It doesn't mean that every program has to be like that, but there certainly should be a good chunk of programming in your year, let's say, that focuses on building muscle, because bigger muscles are stronger muscles across individuals all the time. The second thing is that strength is a motor skill. So one of the reasons why it's movement specific is because you have to be good at those movements in order to be strong at them. You can be very strong at other movements that are similar. So you can be very strong, for instance, at leg pressing, and it probably won't carry over to squatting. You can be very strong on a Smith machine, and it might not carry over to squatting. And it doesn't mean that you don't have a lot of muscle, and it doesn't mean that you haven't fulfilled the third aspect, which is going to be, actually working at max levels. But knowing the actual movement is really important. One of the things we do here is whenever we're doing any movement, we always start the day off with 10 or 15 reps with the empty bar. And I say, if you do that once a week, every week for a year, you've got 500 extra reps on just this movement alone, and your motor skill will be much better, and you'll be much more comfortable under the bar even as it gets heavy. So motor skill is important. Specificity of the movement is really important. So you want to be good at what you're doing. The third thing is that you want to work that max effort. You want to get used to pushing yourself at those really high intensities, not just relative intensities. 90% of your 1 rep max is a very high absolute intensity, but the relative intensity would be taking 90% to failure versus only doing it once. And this goes for all the different intensities all across the percentage spectrum. Getting better, working at higher relative intensities, where you're closer to failure, is important. Working at both higher relative but also higher absolute intensities are both important. Getting intensity into your program really matters. And so, again, if you have a fair amount of muscle and you're really skilled at front squatting, the missing component could be that you just need to work at higher absolute and relative intensities a little more often. That could mean being over 80%, over 90%. It could mean approaching failure a little more. And this kind of goes with what we said for hypertrophy. You don't need to spend the whole year doing it like that. More likely, just once in a while, spending programs where you're getting those higher intensities matters a lot to the production of strength. And so those are basically the three big aspects that we're looking for when it comes to getting really strong. You need to practice the movement itself, get really good at practicing the movement. Make sure you're working on building lean mass. And so as much as practicing the movement and doing it intensely is important, building lean mass in the right muscle regions is also very important. And then going along with what I just said, the intensity matters as well. It's not enough to be really good at the movement with low weight and to have a lot of muscle. You also need to get some weight on the bar, so to speak, once in a while. And when you can sort of fulfill these three points on the triangle, you'll find yourself very strong. And when you can do it across a bunch of different movements, that varied practice, again, like I said, front squatting, back squatting, safety bar squatting, these are the types of things that will help build even more of that motor skill and give you the opportunity to try to build muscle in a different way and build intensity in a slightly different way as well. But if you fill all 3 points of that triangle, that is really that pretty much covers most of your bases when it comes to getting really strong.